And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. That is right, it is time once again for Coffee Talk or Coffee Talk Live. And you can find me Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the live portion on YouTube at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. Also, you can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Coffee Talk Chat, and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. Being joined today by Dusty. Actually, there's a multitude of felines in the room. There's Dusty sitting in the chair, for those of you who can see. Granny Smith playing with a toy mouse on the floor. In the corner there is Little Girl, and then Daniel just walked into the room. Here he is. So I got four felines in the room keeping me company at the moment. I know not everyone can see that because there are people who are listening and not watching. And for those of you who are listening and not watching, naturally, I do read through as many of the comments as I reasonably can so that you can keep up with the conversation. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have chimed in thus far. I see Dragon is here, Helter is here, Brian, Old Guy, Boogers, Kimberly is here. Glad you could all make it today. Those of you who have messaged in, and those of you who have chosen not to or can't, and that's fine. That is fine as we get ready to jump off into the realm of the news and take a look at some things from the news and see what's going on in the world, have a little bit of discussion, and try to decide if any of it makes any damn sense or if we're being lied to about every freaking thing, which is probably the case. Now, this is something that I found very interesting, and it's following up on a story that we talked about last week that was not circulating, as was pointed out by, in particular, Cruising, who is often in the chat, who is a public school teacher, and this involved a school shooting that took place in Wisconsin. And they didn't hear anything about it, and the law requires them to. But I found the story. Also, Gary Edwards has joined us. Glad you could make it today. There's a follow up to this story, and it gets shadier and shadier every time I look at it. So we get ready to pop that open, and you'll see why here. USA Today article: teen fatally shot by police outside of a school was wielding a pellet gun. Uh-oh, if that's true. Because looking at this article, I've read a couple of articles on this. It doesn't make any sense. A teen, he was 14 years old. Oh, and it says it right there. 14-year-old boy who was fatally shot by police in Wisconsin outside a school earlier this week was wielding a pellet gun and pointed it at officers before they shot him. The boy, who was a student in the Mount Horeb School District, did not comply with officers' command to drop the Ruger .177 caliber pellet rifle, and police shot him when he pointed the weapon at them on Wednesday, the State Department of Justice said in a statement. And there's no denying that because of both school camera footage and police body camera footage. And is that count as a pellet gun? That's an air rifle. .177 is an air rifle, which you can kill someone with if you know what you're doing. I doubt this teenage kid does, but you can kill somebody with a .77 air rifle. And it said air rifle. I always thought of a pellet gun as that little plastic gun that shoots the little yellow plastic balls. You know the one I'm talking about? To me, that's a pellet gun. I've never heard a BB gun or an air gun or air rifle referred to as a pellet gun. Just saying. Back to the article, it says life-saving measures were deployed, but the subject died on the scene, according to statements. No one else was injured. The Mount Horeb police officers who were involved remain on administrative leave in accordance with agency policy. So he was shot by school police. Mount Horeb police officers, or is that it's because it's a Mount Horeb school district? I'm going to assume that, because I know in the last time I worked with public schools was in Topeka, and they had their own Topeka School Police Department armed officers in both the high and middle schools. So I'm assuming they might have been school police. The middle school and 4 other Mount Horeb area school district schools were locked down late Wednesday morning. Some remained locked down into that evening. That doesn't make sense. You let the kids go home. The situation's been neutralized. The district serves 2,500 children across 5 schools. An emergency alert was also sent to residents' phones, warning of an active shooter in the middle school. Parents waiting to reunify with their children expressed fear at hearing of an active shooter at the school. Many children were in tears as they rejoined their parents. And we read all of that when we read this article on Friday. Kids hiding in closets and hiding in the bathroom and afraid even to make a text on their phone. And we had a lot of discussion about that because I'm like, God, these kids are so scared they can't even text on their phone. It just kind of, to me, kind of pathetic, but whatever. And now it's like, okay, now it's an air gun. Now it's an air gun, .177 Ruger air gun or air rifle. He had an air rifle. Was it a semi-automatic air rifle or a pump style air rifle? It doesn't say. And also, why would he charge armed officers with it? He's got officers bearing down on him, weapons drawn, and decides to point his rifle at them instead of putting it down. Is he trying to get killed? I have more questions now. If this is true, because nowadays you never know. And Vegas is here. He says, really heard what I think. I don't know. What did you think? And Helter says, if the story is true, the cops will release the body camera footage within 24 hours. If false, the public won't see the video until many years later after the victims' families file several lawsuits. Nature Nerd says, according to TLDR News, the EU only had a 0.2% economic growth in 2023, which is pretty terrible. I'm surprised the EU didn't lose. Dragon says they're not about to believe the police report unless it can be corroborated by non-cops. And Cyberjack Sr. is here, as well as Stefan and Carrick. Glad you guys could join us today. So, yeah, and there ought to be enough witnesses there. There ought to be enough witnesses there to add some validity to it. Never mind all the camera footage that you have from the schools and from the police body cameras, which I still haven't found. So I don't know what's going on. And Stefan wants to know, is YouTube running good for you now, or are they still messing with you? Oh, they're still messing with me. Of course. They're still messing with me. Take a look again. I often cite Prepper University as an example. It's almost 67,000 subscribers. Video I put up last week. It's been almost a week. It probably has less than 300 views on it. Tell me that's not being shadow banned. Oh, but there's no such thing, right? And Cyberjack Senior says .177 are lead pellet caliber. Yeah, and I know you can. I mean, there are people who hunt small game with .177 air guns, and a properly placed shot could kill a person. You just got to know what you're doing, and I won't get into that any further. But that I have more questions now, because I'm like, all right, if it was just an air rifle, why the hell didn't the kid put it down? He's going to aim it at officers, because this is the claim now. He pointed it at the officers, and you got somebody in a situation like that with apparently a rifle, looks real enough. I've got a gun drawn and you raise it up at me, I'm going to shoot you. That's the instinct, self-preservation. Never mind the law or police or whatever. That's just self-preservation under most circumstances. There's, you would think, because I know there are people that would still freeze. There are. But that left me very curious. That left me very curious now, and I'm still not seeing very much about that story. And again, probably because it doesn't fit the narrative. Not a big black scary gun, and 5 people were shot and one of them is dead and it's a massacre. And now we can spin this whole, oh, guns are bad and we need to ban them narrative that the government and the media love to spin. Can't do it with this story. The alleged shooter was neutralized in the parking lot by law enforcement on the scene. So, yeah, there's no way around that. Why won't this pause? I've got something. Oh, there's an ad trying to come up on it because I'm setting up for the next story here. And this is something that just happened. It just dropped in the media like less than an hour ago. This just popped into the media streams. And so you may not have seen this yet. This is another active shooter situation that took place in a church and was handled properly again. So you're probably not going to see this elsewhere. Raccoon Eyes has joined us. Glad you could make it. And Cyberjack Sr. says, the rare creature, common sense. Yeah, well, I try if you're talking about me. But this is going to be another USA Today article of all things. I'm not a fan of USA Today, but I've seen this circulating. Again, I found it circulating. It's not really in the media as of yet. But this is a Pennsylvania church that, how a lot of churches now, they film for their YouTube or whatever. Active shooter situation took place in the church, and I have video footage that I'll show you. And they brought the guy down. It says, man points gun at Pennsylvania pastor during church. Police later find body at the man's home. So I'll read the article real quick, and then I'll show you this video clip. And that's the pastor on the podium. It says, law enforcement in Western Pennsylvania are investigating after video footage shows a 26-year-old man pulling a gun on a preacher during a live-streamed church service Sunday. Okay, this occurred Sunday then, but it's only just getting into the news now, apparently, because this article right now, it says it's 2 hours old currently. Police are also investigating after reported the officers found a man fatally shot to death in the suspect's home later that evening. Just before 1:10 p.m., Pennsylvania State Police say troopers responded to Jesus's Dwelling Place Church. And I don't mean to laugh at the name of the church, but some of the names that they have for these churches, to me, it just seems kind of silly or wordy or long-winded. In North Braddock, after the suspect entered the church and attempted to shoot the preacher during his sermon. North Braddock, a borough in Atherley County, is about 9 miles southeast of downtown Pittsburgh. It says troopers identified the suspect as Bernard Jr. Pulte of North Braddock. Police pointed a firearm at the Pulte pointed a firearm at the pastor, attempted to shoot, and the firearm failed. Police wrote in the news release. The gun did not go off, but he did pull the trigger. Okay, and then I'll show you the film footage because he pulls the gun. I'm going to try. I'll see if I can expand it. For those of you who can see, and for those of you who can't, of course, I will explain. So here goes the clip. Click didn't work. And somebody jumps out of the audience and holds him down. And then they come and they wrestle the gun out of his hands and held it for the police. There we go again. There's the pastor up on the podium. Dude runs up, points the gun. Pastor runs and hides. Someone jumps out of the audience and tackles him. I'm like, shit, good for you. It's nice to see somebody standing up. And then the pastor comes back and they wrestle the gun out of his hands, hold him down on the floor. And that's what's happening in that scene. Gary Edwards says he heard the gun jammed. Yeah, apparently it did. So I guess that was the pastor's blessed day, as it were. I thought it was interesting, though, that the pastor's first reaction was to cover his face with his hands. He covered his face with his hands and then turned and jumped behind the podium. And then when the guy ran forward, someone from the audience took the initiative to tackle him and pull him down. And that's what Nature Nerd says here. It says nearly 24 suspected migrants. Oh, this is something else. Nearly 24 suspected migrants seen springing off a boat as it arrives in Lux, California marina. Michael Savage article. I haven't seen it. I think this is the one that I was trying to catch. Helter says this is a rare example of a person stepping up and helping when someone's in danger instead of pulling out the phone and trying to go viral. Exactly. So kudos to that guy for taking the initiative. Taking the initiative. And that's what you would like to see more of instead of people being cowardly. And in sharp contrast to the previous story, and I understand they're kids, okay, we're in a junior high school in that story, but hiding in closets, hiding in stalls and bathrooms, laying on the floor crying, afraid even to text on your phone because you heard there was somebody with a gun in the school. Cowardly to the extreme, even if they are kids. You know what I mean? And it's like I said, I understand they're just kids, but most adults are just that weak-willed. So it's good to see this guy willing to again take the initiative and dive in there and be like, dude, you're not shooting anybody in here today, and tackle him and hold him down. But again, I question the reaction of the pastor. I could understand diving for cover, but he covered his face. Like maybe he's like, oh, look, if I don't see it, it'll be okay. I don't get that. I don't know why he covered his face. But that was, you see right there. Look that up. I'll freeze frame it. Covers his face here. Right there. And I'm like, why are you covering your face? I don't know. And you never know. I mean, people react all kinds of ways to different situations. That was just his automatic fear reaction. And I don't blame him for diving for cover either, because you don't want to get shot. You don't want to get shot. Brian says, did he get the key to the city? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what happened, other than obviously someone in the church, and you'd like to see more of that, actually. And that's more of an old school reaction, because back in the day when I was a kid and I would read about somebody pulling a gun somewhere, like in the 80s when I used to read the newspaper. You remember newspapers, people? Do they even make those anymore? I know. I think in Georgia, the Atlanta paper only makes Sunday editions now. I don't think they make daily editions anymore. I don't know how it is in a lot of other major cities like like Boston or New York or whatever. But when I used to read the paper, someone pulled a gun, people would try to jump them. You don't hear that anymore. You don't hear that anymore. People are so afraid to take a stand, to stand up for themselves, even to defend their own lives or to defend the lives of someone else, even a loved one, even family, even friends. It's just like, oh no, it's all about me. It's all about me. We're in this very selfish state of mind in the Western world, unfortunately. It's kind of scary. It's kind of scary. It makes you wonder what direction we're heading in. And as was pointed out by Helter, that it's rare that you see someone willing to take action instead of his action was to do something instead of like, oh crap, let me get my phone. I can get this on TikTok. It'll go viral. I'll make a fortune. that would be the normal reaction of a lot of people, is to try to film it. And you see that all the time. People filming other individuals get beaten, robbed, injured, killed. Raccoon says they missed the Sunday paper and looking through all the ads for different stores, especially around Christmas. Yeah, the ads and coupons and the Sunday funnies, and it was a fun thing. It was a fun thing for a lot of people. And Unknown Nose is here. Glad you could make it. Brian says newspapers are still out there. They're just more expensive now. I bet they are. Well, all the entire time I was growing up, and even when I used to work for the paper, delivering the newspapers, by the way, I delivered for the Boston Globe and then for the Boston Herald. They were a quarter. It seems like they were a quarter forever, and then the Sunday edition was like 75 cents or a dollar. Nature Nerd says we were told to take care of ourselves first and don't be a hero. And there are instances where you are penalized for being a hero. You can get in trouble for being a hero, like on the job. Yep, and Fluke Man is here. Fluke Man is here. Like if you work in a place and you were to fight somebody for drawing a weapon on you or trying to rob the store, and even if you were successful, you could end up losing your job for that because the company doesn't want the liability of your being injured or killed. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want to pay the insurance. So they'd rather you sit there and just be humiliated by a would-be robber than defend yourself. Gary Edwards says crazies on airplanes get tackled quickly nowadays. I would hope so. Brian says most people who witness bullying will laugh, look the other way, or film it like you said. Exactly. Exactly. Because times have changed. People have gotten weaker willed. And again, there's that scenario of fight or flight and now freeze. And that's my own personal speculation that there's a third F now, fight, flight, or freeze, where you'll just kind of stand around and wait for somebody else to do something instead of running or helping, even if it's to help yourself in a potentially life-threatening situation. You stand around and look stupid. Nobody's going to help you a lot of the time. You're on your own. You're on your own. As we shift into the protests, of course, most of you are aware there are protests going on all across the country in colleges and universities, and there are protests taking place in various parts of the world. They actually had the nerve to do a pro-Palestinian protest at Auschwitz yesterday. You believe that? The audacity. You want to see a movement lose all credibility? That's the way to do it. And Fluke Man says you get criticized for not doing anything. Keyboard warriors are tough online. Yes, they are. And Gary Edwards reminds us that Seinfeld's last episode focused on depraved indifference. Yeah, two-parter, right? Was it a two-parter or was it longer? I remember that, though. That because that was their attitude. If you really examine the Seinfeld characters, the four main characters, none of them are really likable or trustworthy characters. They're all extremely selfish. They're all extremely selfish in different ways, but they're all extremely selfish. And I think that's why they chose to use that as the grand finale of the series, to give them their comeuppance for their behavior throughout the entire series. But the Center Square, New York Police Department says protesters had weapons, gas masks, and "Death to America" pamphlets. And this is the pamphlet, a short introduction to terrorism and death to America. Oh, wow. There's a lot of knives here, hammers, axes. There's gas masks and cycling helmets being displayed on this table. I'll expand that really quickly. So this is what the protesters that they, I guess, pulled out of the, are these the ones they pulled out of the building? I guess the article will tell us. This is what they were carrying, and the New York Police Department wants people to know, hey, this is what we confiscated from these people. They thought they were in there for a fight. So high-ranking official with the New York Police Department said protesters had weapons, including knives and hammers, as well as pamphlets with "Death to America" in them. Michael Kemper, New York Police Department Chief of Transit, posted photos Friday of what police confiscated from protesters. For those romanticizing the protests occurring on college campuses, "Death to America" is one sentiment that runs counter to what we believe in, what we stand for, and what many have fought for on behalf of this country. Kemper said on X. And if you think the words written in this piece of paper are disturbing, you should have heard the vile, disgusting, hateful, and threatening words coming out of the mouths of far too many of these so-called peaceful protesters. Kemp posted a video of a pamphlet stating death to Israeli real estate and death to America. The pamphlet also stated disrupt, reclaim, and destroy Zionist business interests everywhere. New York Police Department Deputy Commissioner Kaz Daugherty posted on X photos of items he said the police confiscated from protesters who took over Hamilton Hall at Columbia University. The photos showed gas masks, earplugs, helmets, goggles, tape, hammers, knives, ropes, and books on terrorism. The book was written by Charles Townshend, a professor of international history at Keele University in England, published in 2011 and is 161 pages long. These are not the tools of students protesting. They are the tools of agitators and of people who are working for something nefarious, Daugherty said on X. Thankfully, the New York Police Department was able to prevent whatever they were planning and stop them before they could do it. Kemper asked who was organizing the protests. However, as we've been stating for the last 2 weeks, there is underlying radical indoctrination of some of these students, vulnerable and young people being influenced by professional agitators. Who is funding and leading this movement? Kemper asked on X. Well, I can answer that question because we've already talked about it last week in detail. A lot of this money is coming from the Soros Foundation. Some of it was coming from the Bill and Marlene. Is it Marlena? I keep messing her name up all the time. I might be saying her name wrong, but the Bill Gates Foundation charities, although they cut them off a short time ago, they stopped paying into these agitators. I guess it was getting too hot for them. But the Soros Foundation and other big tech billionaires funneling money into these agitators, many of which are not even from these universities. And again, that's something that we talked about in detail with some articles that we read last week, including the previous Friday. Let's see here. Let me catch up a couple of comments. Kimberly says our active shooter training videos at work, big box store, encourages us to take action. Really? Where are you? And Raccoon says this is automatic deportation in my book. Get the idiots out of here. Let them go to Yemen. Remember last week we read that article. Yemen says that American students who are thrown out of these universities are welcome to come to Yemen and get free education. And I think that's a great idea. Let them go to Yemen. Let them see what it's like to actually live in the Middle East with these people that they think they're defending. And, oh, by the way, you have to renounce your citizenship to do it and don't come back. Let them go to Yemen and get a worthless degree from the Middle East that will not have any use or function in the Western world because it won't be permitted. You can't, in first world countries, they will not take a degree from the Middle East or from South America or from Africa, so far as I understand it. Kimberly says, avoid, defend, and deny what our videos state. And Helter says they can only imagine how the Russian and Chinese news media are having a field day with these videos. The whole world is watching. Yes, it is. And they're probably laughing at us. They're probably showcasing this and saying, oh, look at how unraveled and confused American society is. And they would be right. They would be right to be in a position of mocking us. They don't even have to make it up. They don't even have to spin it. That's embarrassing. That's embarrassing, and something needs to be done about it. Isn't that right, little girl? I hear you back there making noise. She's purring at me. I can hear her purring loudly. I don't know if you guys can hear it. But that's what they found. He's naively asking who is funding this, because obviously it's being funded, and that's pretty obvious. And what you're looking at right now is film footage from one of the occupied buildings. which they gave up pretty quickly, by the way. They gave up pretty quickly once the police showed up. I mean, they acted tough, but they weren't so tough after all, despite the fact that they had armed themselves, even knives, little hatchets, hammers, um, helmets, masks. Look at that. I mean, so much for blocking the doors. They're just marching in. The police are marching in single file without even being disrupted. So, yeah, pants pissing time came pretty quickly when the police showed up. So much for demanding that the colleges surrender to your ideology and do what we say or we'll occupy this building forever. Yeah, okay. You gave up pretty quick, although it's just as well that they did. And Gary Edwards says it doesn't take much woke motivation to fuel a college protest. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. These children are very easily manipulated. And they are as children. They really are. I don't care if they are technically adults, many of them. Their mindset is still a childish mindset. They have not matured emotionally. They have not matured emotionally or in their social interaction. They're still the way children are. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing. Let's grow the hell up. Oh, and Nostalgic Pod Blast is here. Glad you could make it today. Monkey says, thank God I'm done with college and have usual work skills. Yeah. And that's the thing, too. A lot of these degrees are pretty worthless. And that's something I have lined up for this week. I found an article talking about 20 degrees or college degrees, graduate degrees that the work industry considers to be worthless. When you walk in and this is the degree on your resume goes in the shredder. And I think that'll be an interesting point of discussion that I have lined up for later on. I don't know what day I'll do it, but it'll be soon. Nature Nerd says, are these students going to be proud of their action decades later when a documentary comes out about these Palestine protests? And that's something I speculated on last week as well. Because we all do stupid things. We all do stupid things. And you look back on it in your life and you say, wow, I wish I didn't do that, or I regret that. How big do you want that regret to be? Is the question. And that's an excellent question, Nature Nerd. And like I said, I speculated on it myself last week talking about some of this. 20, 30 years down the road, are they going to be sitting there scratching their heads like, damn, I don't believe I was involved with that garbage? You know, that's you got to wonder. You really got to wonder. Gary Edwards says professional agitators ran away to their van down by the river. I would rather have Chris Farley than any of them. As we shift around here, get ready for the next article. But because we are going to stay somewhat on the same subject as we take a look at Columbia University and what the students at Columbia University are demanding. And I think it's pretty funny, actually, what's going on out here. Oh, is it working properly? I think I have a little bit of a freeze. No, I think I'm all right. We'll see, because sometimes the restream gets weird. Fluke Man says they were only a couple of months ago. They found out Barbary pirates were attacking Europe, taking Europeans as slaves from 15th to 19th century, and schools never taught us this. No, because it doesn't fit the narrative. That does not fit the narrative of what is being used to create division amongst people in this country and in parts of Europe as well. It doesn't fit. And this is a New York Post article. Hopefully it's a smooth transition. It looks like it is. Smooth transition. Columbia law students want the school to cancel finals and pass all the students because they've been irrevocably shaken after the protest breakup. Really? Really? So you just want a free law degree? The student editors at Columbia Law Review want administrators to cancel the law school's exams and pass all of its students after police cleared out anti-Israel encampments last week, claiming in a letter that the police action left the student's body irrevocably shaken. The letter, penned right after the police department dismantled protesters' tent city Tuesday night and evicted them from nearby Hamilton Hall, also said the school should at least let students receive a simple pass-fail grade because they're just so upset. They're so upset, people. Their feelings are hurt. Even if they weren't there, had nothing to do with it, never saw the protest. Their little feelings. Their feelings, ladies and gentlemen. The violence we witnessed last night has irrevocably shaken many of us. On the review, the editors whined in the letter. Thank you, New York Post. Whined in the letter published by Above the Law. You to call yourself above the law. We know this to be the same for a majority of our classmates, the editor continued. That's because none of them want to put forward the effort it takes to finish their finals. Videos have circulated of police clad in riot gear, mocking and brutalizing our students. The events of last night left us and many of our peers unable to focus and highly emotional during the tumultuous time. Now, in the last article, you just saw the police coming in and rounding up the protesters in that one building. Did it look like they were mocking anybody or wrestling with anybody or anything? The students basically gave up. It's not like out here in Georgia where they used rubber bullets, tear gas, and fire hoses, okay? The letter added that the confrontation followed growing distress students have felt for months as the humanitarian crisis abroad continues to unfold and as the blatant anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and racism on campus have escalated. Pick one. Which one are you upset about? Are you for or against? Or if you're neutral, then none of it matters. We believe that canceling exams would be a proportionate response to the level of distress our peers have been feeling, the editor cried. It didn't say that. I added that part. In the alternative, making courses mandatory pass-fail would be the next most equitable solution. Just leave the school. Just quit. Just quit and go operate the fryer at McDonald's before a robot takes that job. They do have a fryer robot that they're using, by the way. They not in all McDonald's restaurants, but they got it. Flippy is the machine that flips the burgers. I don't know what the one that operates the fryer is called, but they better hurry before that spot is gone. The demonstrations at the Manhattan Ivy are part of dozens of demonstrations at colleges across the country in which students have sought to take over buildings, build encampments, and disrupt classes in protest of the war in the Gaza. Yeah. Oh no. That is so pathetic. That is so pathetic. So what are you going to do? Let me catch up a couple of comments here really quickly. Monkey wants to know what's my opinion on FTC announcing banning non competition, or what were they banning? Are you talking about our non-competent clauses? And that's for what? Signing a non-disclosure agreement, right? That doesn't mean it won't happen. And I don't think people should be signing a non-disclosure agreement unless it's pertaining to something that is vital for the operation of the company or agency. Like, for example, you would sign a non-disclosure agreement at Coca-Cola if you had access to their formula so that you don't tell anyone else what the formula is. I can understand that because that's proprietary. But yeah, just because they banned it doesn't mean it'll happen. Let me catch up a few more. Cyberjack Senior says big shiny participation button. Yeah, I know. Give him a button that says I was there. I was there for the protest. Dragon says, yeah, that'll prepare them for the real world where companies regularly just stop doing business for a bit when employees feel shaken. And Fluke Man wants to know if anyone else had a screen freeze. As long as the audio is still working, and that's my big thing. If you can still hear me, I can get through it until Restream catches up with the video portion, because sometimes it will choke a little bit. But yeah, sometimes during a transition, when I open a page, it gets a little weird. It gets a little weird for a second. And Helter being snarky, I guess, it says, Your Honor, we need to cancel the trial because the violence my client committed is too triggering for me. There you go. There you go. And Gary Edwards says, maybe the rumors about Israel building the third temple has secretly escalated the increased Islamic attacks. Yeah, but they've been saying that forever. I don't see a temple yet. And it's not going to be secretly escalated. I was going to say it wouldn't be a secret if they built it, but there's nothing to say until they start pouring a foundation. When that happens, then there are people that are going to be upset. But until then, it's all just talk. And it's been talk for decades. It's been talk for decades. One more on here. Is this also Columbia University? Yes, it is. Because one of their chief agitators here has been exposed as somebody very important. And this is a Meow article, MEAW. Double W. And we'll see how this transition goes. Did that freeze? I know it pops orange for a second, and that's okay. I'm not that worried about that. Outrage erupts as violent leader of Columbia University's anti-Israel protest is identified as the son of millionaire ad executives. I wonder if they're the ad executives from Climate Moms. Or is it Science Moms? Excuse me, Science Moms. Because, I pointed it out before, Science Moms are neither mothers nor are they women. The people who run Science Moms, all those really, really annoying commercial ads where they try to convince you that because someone lit a cigarette, the entire world's going to blow up, are a team of ad executives, like high-end, big-demand ad executives and former activists from the Obama administration. All male. New York City, social media erupts. Yeah, I doubt it. In a fury as the identity. I'm reading it wrong, of the person orchestrating the violent anti-Israel demonstration at Columbia University is unveiled. Shockingly, it turns out he's not just any protester, but someone unrelated to the students, married, and the son of a millionaire advertising executive or executives. That's his photo. He couldn't pass for a student, could he? He looks as old as I do. This bombshell revelation sparked outrage across social media, with many questioning the authenticity of the protests and whether they were fueled by hidden agendas. You think? The suspicions didn't simply materialize out of nowhere. They were planted by New York City officials, including Mayor Eric Adams and the New York Police Department, who had previously suggested the potential involvement of external influences in fueling what initially began as a peaceful protest. It was never a peaceful protest. According to the Daily Mail, the mastermind behind the recent Columbia University protest has been identified as James Carlson, a 40-year-old with a privileged background. According to reports, he's the son of Richard Tarlow and Sandy Carlson Tarlow, the power couple behind the successful advertising agency Carlson and Partners, known for their work with big brands like Revlon and Victoria's Secret. James, also recognized as Cody Carlson or Cody Tarlow, gained attention following his arrest by the police department on charges that included burglary and illegal entry during the Columbia protests. This is not his initial brush with the law. Allegedly, he has been associated with antichrist circles for a considerable period, or anarchist. Good Lord. Sorry about that. I read that completely wrong. Anarchist circles for a considerable period and was previously apprehended during the tumultuous G8 protests in San Francisco in 2005. Despite his privileged upbringing, James pursued an unconventional path, graduating with honors from Brooklyn Law School and embarking on a career as an animal rights lawyer. He has even engaged in undercover investigations to expose animal abuse in factory farms. That's not hard to do. Adding to the intrigue, James is reportedly married to model Kim Hayerman and resides in a lavish Brooklyn brownstone worth $3.4 million, where he enjoys family life with his 2 children. His involvement in the Columbia protests hasn't gone unnoticed. He's suspected of burning Israeli flags during demonstrations, and his activism extends to previous incidents of blocking bridges and tunnels. The Columbia protests took a violent turn as footage surfaced of protesters causing chaos in Hamilton Hall, resulting in over 100 arrests. Columbia's president was compelled to summon the New York Police Department to restore order, blah, blah. We get it. Yeah, he has to be rich having a wife that looks like that, because he is not a good looking dude at all. Oh my God. I don't know what to say about that. And Gary Edwards says, Mad Men. Mad Men, I tell you. And Monkey says, NDA, I can understand if you're in a point where you have potential access to the IP, but non-competes make you have to wait for a certain amount of time before you can work again in the same field. I see. And Cyberjack Sr. says, your show's been running much more smoothly. I try. I'm trying. And then Monkey says, despite having no access to the IP at all. Okay, so elaborating on the NDA. But oh yeah, I see what you're saying. Where you can't jump across into another field right away. You shouldn't have to be restrained from that either. Nature Nerd says factory farms have terrible, unsanitary, crammed conditions for chickens and pigs. Yeah, I'm no fan of family farms. Or not family farms, but industrial farms, rather. I'm no fan of, because they do mistreat the animals. So, like I said, it's not that hard to demonstrate animal cruelty at an industrial farm on that level. And if you're an animal rights lawyer, who do you work for? How do you make any money? I don't know how that works. That sounds like pure activism. And if he's an animal rights guy, what the hell is he doing at Columbia University, stirring up students in violent protests? He has no business there. No business there whatsoever. But again, interesting to point that out. Very interesting to point that out. Because it's been obviously all these colleges and universities have been receiving outside influence, paid outside influence. I'd be curious to see if this guy got a check. Some of these guys getting anywhere from $2,800 to over $7,000 a week for a minimum of 8 hours from organizations like the Soros Foundation charities. And it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Yet Donald Trump is a threat to our democracy. This is what the media will tell you. Talk show hosts, politicians will cry that from the rooftops. Oh, he's a threat to our democracy. The people who were at January 6th are a threat to our democracy, but this guy is allowed to do this. Terrorist booklets and pamphlets, Death to America, how to disrupt order, instruction manuals, being paid to do it, paid to go out and stir up students and others to come to these colleges and universities and act an ass and tear up and be destructive. Unbelievable. But it's allowed. That's allowed. No one tries to stop Soros from spreading that money around. Nobody tries to stop Bill Gates from spreading that money around, or any of these other people that are involved in this. Nobody tries to stop Saudi Arabia and Iran and Lebanon and China from donating millions and millions of dollars to all of these colleges and universities. 8 to 10 billion in the last 5 years or so. And we're not supposed to suspect that there's outside influence causing problems. Nature Nerd says, could a law against paid activism be made? In theory, it could be, but then there's another law that'll have clauses in it that'll screw everybody else up. And that's one of the biggest problems with all these laws. They want you, the system wants you to cry for more law enforcement and more laws and more regulations until you're choked to death from it. Until you're choked out by it. Cyberjack says Elon's brain chip might allow humans to talk better with animals. Maybe. Oh no. And Gary wants to know, has anyone seen the movie Mystery Men? I have seen that. Nature Nerd says, if you protest in Saudi Arabia, you'd be stopped immediately. Yeah, pretty much. But since we brought up industrial farms, since the subject of industrial farms came up, and this is from Awful Funny US, Tyson dumped 371 million pounds of toxic chemicals into the environment, half of which was in 3 states. Recent investigation uncovered foods has released million pounds of toxic pollutants straight into the environment in the last 5 years. This poses a serious threat to ecosystems, putting wildlife and humans at risk. Nitrogen, phosphorus, chloride, oil, and cyanide among the pollutants that were dumped. 4,884 plants are not included because they are not even required to report wastewater data to the EPA. This level of pollution has drawn widespread criticism from the American public and has led to calls for stricter oversight and regulations. This is a prime example of what I just suggested. You're going to point the finger at Tyson and say they dumped 371 million pounds of toxic chemicals into the environment. Did they pour it directly into the environment, or did they pour it through their own water processing? When I worked at Frito-Lay, we had our own digesters and our own water processing plant. Our wastewater went through our processing plant, and it didn't go past Frito-Lay property. I imagine Tyson's probably the same way. But then the article points out that there's 4,884 plants not included. Why are they not included? Because most of them are small family operations or independently owned operations, which is why the EPA doesn't bother with them. Now, if you use something like this, a big problem, to make a big law, it will terrorize these other 4,884 small operations, and Tyson will still get away with it because Tyson can afford to. See how that works? It says between 2018 and 2022, 41 Tyson slaughterhouses at large-scale processing plants released a whopping 371 million pounds of pollutants into the environment. As per findings from the Union of Concerned Scientists, the pollutants were from 87 billion gallons of wastewater. This wastewater also included blood, bacteria, and animal waste. Where did the wastewater go? I want to see if the article says where the wastewater actually ended up. According to an analysis by The Guardian, the volume of wastewater was sufficient to fill 132,000 Olympic-sized pools. The wastewater was often released into waterways that are relied upon for drinking water. So are they being dumped directly into the river, or is that runoff from after they process it? I'm still not clear. And again, I'm basing that off of my experience with Frito-Lay and their food processing practices. I don't know how Tyson does it. I'm just speculating. The data in the research comes directly from disclosures on water pollution that Tyson is legally obligated to report. The analysis conducted by USC relies on the latest publicly accessible water pollution data that Tyson is mandated to disclose under existing regulations. So Tyson, they know this because Tyson basically told them, yeah, this is what we dumped. They're not required to hide it. It goes on. Tyson's a Fortune 500 or Fortune 100 company. I don't care. Nitrogen and phosphorus levels, I don't care. I'm just trying to see if they have their own processing, and that's something that I can look up. Then they go on to cry about this. Omanja Goswami, USC co-author, says there are over 5,000 meat and poultry processing plants in the United States. Only a fraction of them are required to report their pollution and abide by limits. As one of the largest processors in the game with a near monopoly in some states, Tyson is in a unique position to treat even hefty fines and penalties for polluting as simply the cost of doing business. That's true. But that's also why, if you change the regulations, because that's what this article is calling for, those other processing plants, those small operations, those mom and pop systems will be crushed out of existence and left with the only option of basically selling out in order to survive. And Dragon says Tyson's not going to face repercussions for this. Remember when Tyson was found employing 6 minors and they only got fined $90,000? A slap on the wrist and continue as normal. Basically. Flukeman says he'd like to ask people shouting Trump is a threat to democracy to explain to me what's democracy. Wouldn't be surprised they wouldn't have an answer to that question. A lot of people don't have an answer to the question why they do the things they do or believe the things that they believe, unfortunately, especially these younger people. You ask them what they're doing and they don't know why. They don't know why they're there. Oh, because this and that. And it's like, those are just talking points. But what does that mean? And they can't answer the question, unfortunately. But yeah, this ties in with the previous point about government overregulation and people crying and screaming for laws. Yeah, you can make a law, and they could make a law to make it illegal to pay protesters, but they would find a way to use that to jam up everyone else, to use it against everyone, to punish everyone. Again, laws are for the law abiding. People obey the law because they choose to, or they feel that they have no choice. But there are those who choose to work against it. And the way that many laws and regulations are written and set up, they'll punish 100,000 people to make an example out of one, to hurt one person or to hinder one person. Gun control is a great example of that. Gun control. Most people who own a firearm are not going to commit a crime with it. They have it for other reasons. But because one person decides to do something outrageous, you've got to torment everyone else who's trying to cooperate. That's the way a lot of laws work, unfortunately. And with that, we are getting close to the top of the hour. So I will go ahead and get ready to start wrapping things up. And Brian made a donation to the channel. He says, do the live streams every week, a day for the rest of your life. Okay. Oh, my God. And Kimberly, one more, says they have a paper mill in their city that's been dumping into the rivers for 50 years. The DNC's finally moving on this issue. Yeah, and they'll get slapped with a fine and go their humble way. So again, you are listening to and or watching Coffee Talk, and you could find the live portion on YouTube Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Join us if you will. And that is at Coffee Talk Live and at Prepper University. Also, you can find me on X at Coffee Talk Chat and fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. So thank you, everybody who was able to join us here today. Special thanks to Brian, who made a donation to the channel. Always appreciated. Goes a long way. And I hope everyone got something out of the conversation. And we will catch you